All right, and we are recording. Well, thank you all for joining. I know a few people are still entering, which is great. My name is Shannon Blankinship. I am the chair of Resilient Jacks, and just want to say hey to everyone before we get started. Anyone else who wants to say hi, this is a great time. Feel free while many are still logging on board.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff.
Hey, Shante. Hey, Jeff. I'm going to do a quick run through of the program today, and then I'm going to serve as sort of the Zoom technical person. Normally there is an option for me to, okay, just appeared. So I'm going to mute people as they enter now, which is a very nice feature. Thank you to Zoom for offering that. So it's just as people start to come in throughout the presentation, they'll be muted already. But for now, today's agenda, the first thing I'm going to do is kick it over to Ashante, who is going to start us off. We'll then get into our main presentation, which will be about 30 minutes long. We'll then kick it back over to me. I'm going to do a quick update on the Tallahassee session and what's going on in with Resilient Florida, as well as a few other updates of things within the city of Jacksonville, and then from Resilient Jacks ourselves before finishing the meeting out with just an open conversation or updates from any other partner organizations or members that want to tell us about some of the things that you guys have working on, or that you guys are working on. So it'll be about an hour long. And there's still a few people joining in, but let me just make sure that everybody, I think technically we're all in order. So if Ashante, if you're ready, if you want to go ahead and start with your segment, then I will kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I am Ashante Green, the Outreach and Communications Coordinator with Resilient Jacks. Welcome to our coalition meeting. First off, I would like to just welcome all of our new members to Resilient Jacks. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen if I can. Let's see here. There we go. All right. And this is our website, resilientjacks.org. If you are already not a member, please join via membership here. You can join as an individual or an organization. But I wanted to show you guys this area here. All the way down here, this is our founding steering committee members. And look, we have some new members that joined us. So I would like to go ahead and welcome all of them. We have the Duval Audubon Society, A1A Solar, as well as My Green Doctor, FMIA, On-Site Environmental Consultants, EW Dunn, Developments, and I think that's all of them. So please join Resilient Jacks. Lastly, I wanted to show you guys or talk to you about our social media. If you are not already following us, please follow us on social media. On Facebook and Instagram, it's Resilient Jacks. I also have the pleasure of introducing our speaker today. We are joined by, let's see here, I have her bio. Let me go ahead and read that for you guys. We are joined, I'm sorry, give me 1 second here. I just had it up. Okay, we are joined today by Miss Ginny Stibolt. I think I pronounced your last name correctly. She began her professional life as a teacher, and over the years, she has taught many subjects, including math, science, business, and computer courses at levels of 7th grade through college. She is a lifetime gardener with a master's in science degree in botany from the University of Maryland. After moving to Florida in 2004, she found that gardening is different in Florida. She has been writing about her adventures in Florida gardening since then, including books and hundreds of articles. She's managed the Sustainable Garden in Florida Facebook group and writes her own blog, which I encourage all of you to follow. It's www.greengardenmatters.com. I'll drop that in the chat for you guys. It's www.greengardeningmatters.com. Jeannie, please talk to us about resilient landscaping. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to everybody. And I will share my screen here. I have a short presentation, and what I will do is go through to give you ideas for how to create a more authentic Florida yard with native plantings. And these are 3 of my 5 books that address this topic. The newest one is a step-by-step guide to a Florida native yard that I wrote with Marjorie Shropshire, who is also the illustrator. The art of maintaining a Florida native landscape, because even though we have native yard, they do require maintenance. And so I have ideas in this book on how to reduce the maintenance. And I have to say that the photo here on the cover of this book is my front yard that used to be a lawn. So now it's a woods with, and of course I have my pinkster azalea, although I found out recently it's probably a pink flame azalea because it blooms too late, but I'll have to wait till it gets new growth to see if there's hairs on the stem. And then back in 2009, I wrote Sustainable Gardening for Florida, which is a beginner's guide to Florida. I also wrote a organic vegetable gardening book for Florida. And also I was co-author of a climate-wise landscaping book. So I'm supposed to be retired, but that didn't happen really. And what got me started was when we moved here in 2004, I bought 64 tulip bulbs from a local store, and the next spring I got 1 leaf. So I said, that's just not right. So that's what got me started. And I wrote Adventures of a Transplanted Gardener columns in the Jacksonville Times-Union as a community columnist, and basically turned it into a second or third or fourth career. So that's where I've been. That's how I started. But in 2006, I joined the Native Plant Society, and that changed my whole viewpoint for not what would grow in Florida, and it wasn't going to be tulips, but what belongs here. And that changed my whole idea for what belongs here. But as a native plant enthusiast, we sometimes have a hard time overcoming preconceived notions. So in this presentation, I'll talk about why natives are important, how to get started, and how to plan ahead. And I have this meme here that I post on the 4th of July on my Facebook page. And if you're not friends with me on Facebook, go ahead and friend me. So it's my red, white, and blue Florida natives. And what I've tried to do is frame it instead of saying, well, you should plant natives because it's the right thing to do, and say, well, it's the patriotic thing to do. You have an all-American, all-Floridian yard. So we need to sort of frame natives in a different way to get people to think differently. And we have to overcome a lot because we've been programmed by all kinds of different influences to want this in our yards. This is Belfast Castle in Ireland. And when we were there, they were going to have a wedding that day. And everything is just so, it was just totally upkeep. And the upper classes in Britain and in Europe had these highly maintained gardens and lawns just to show how wealthy they were. And somehow that got transferred over across the pond, and we're supposed to do this in our yards. So we have to overcome the programming that we've been subjected to, that this is what we want in our yards. And a lot of times on TV programs and on garden magazines and on social media, you have instant landscaping where all the plants come on a truck and the people come in and they lay it aside and everything comes out in one day. And then ta-da, there you have your new landscape. But landscaping is not an event. It's an ongoing process. Now, this is in my neighborhood, and the people in this house, they brought in 3 loads of dirt to make a berm, to make it a little bit more private back there. And then they planted all these non-native plants on top of the berm and laid in the sod. The sod was St. Augustine, so it's a sort of a native. But other than that, there were no native plants at all. And they installed it during the dry season. And when the wet season came, they had a big drainage problem. So they had water going into their house. And so they had to then take out the whole landscape, take out all the dirt, and come up with something else. So the problem that we have with this instant landscaping in our programming is that we have been trained to think that if the experts come in and just fix it, then it's going to be done. And that's not true. And we're offered these unsustainable and questionable items. So if you go into big box stores, you're offered these cute plants. They're not terribly expensive, but they're expensive when you consider that they're put in 3 or 4 times a year. You have to buy it again and again and again. You have to disturb the soil, and that's bad for the soil. And then mums are offered in the fall, and they don't belong here in Florida. You could use them as a bouquet if you want them, but don't try to plant them in the ground. They're just not going to work. And then we're also offered invasive plants, known invasives like Nandina. This has been a local store in Jacksonville. And not only is it invasive in Florida, but it also kills migrating birds like cedar waxwings. So we are offered these options, and people who don't know any better just say, "Wow, that's pretty. Let's get that." And then they're disappointed when they take them home, because I can tell you as a botanist that these plants here at this garden center of a big box store have completed their life cycle. As far as the plant's concerned, they have completed their mission. They germinated, they grew, they created flowers and set seeds. And so when you take them home, they're going to die. They might not die right away, but as far as the plant's concerned, it's finished. So this is not a sustainable option. Now, Doug Tallamy, who's an entomology professor at University of Delaware, has changed the narrative around native plants. And as an entomologist, he says the plants need to be more than just pretty in our yard. They need to play a role in our local ecosystem. And he's done a lot of research. And so Bringing Home Nature came out in 2007. And then just last year, he did Nature's Best Hope, which is an easier read. And the answer to the title of this book, Nature's Best Hope, the answer is us. We are the answer to that. We are the best hope for nature. So native landscapes and natural Florida landscapes, native Florida landscapes would have much less lawn, much less irrigation on the lawn, no poisons on the lawn, no landscape-wide poisons and pesticides. And this would reduce the fertilizer runoff because we don't want to feed the algae. This is what happens in our rivers. every wet season is that all the stuff that's put in our lawns, they're other people's lawns, not mine, other people's lawns, washes out, and it becomes too much nutrient in our waterways. And as individuals, the biggest and most influential thing that we can do for the planet, and would also save time and money, is to stop with the high maintenance lawns. And in our Climate-Wise Landscaping book, lawns was the first section, because that is the most significant thing you can do, is to rethink the lawn. All right, and another thing that in doing the research for the Climate-Wise Landscaping book, I got to rethink about water. I mean, not only do we want to save water to preserve our aquifers, and because there's 1,000 new people moving into Florida every day, but if we save water, we also save energy, because the water that comes into our tap, it takes energy to extract it from the aquifer or the well. It takes energy to get it to our taps with enough water pressure that we can shower. So when we save water, we are also saving energy, and that reduces the greenhouse gas emissions. So what we're looking for is a more natural landscape that is less pruned, and that would be filled with mostly natives. And just another word here on the poison cycle is that once you start poisoning, then you end up with other things happening, so that if you poison the lawn or your whole landscape with insecticide, then that's going to kill everything, even the beneficial or benign insects. And the predators that are not killed are going to go away because there's nothing there for them to eat. And so after the poison loses its effectiveness, then more pest bugs are going to come along, and they're going to be a worse problem because the predators are gone. So Mother Nature has a balance, and as sustainable gardeners, there are many things that we can do to encourage the predators. So this was on my back porch, and this is a mud dauber wasp. She is taking a caterpillar, is going to put it in the nest and then lay eggs on. But these wasps are also good pollinators, so we want these in the yard. And here is a cicada killer, and they dig nests in non-cultivated, non-mulched dirt around the edges of the landscape. And they take the prey, they put them in the tunnels in there, they lay eggs on them. And so this is a good predator, but the cicada killer is also a good pollinator. So we want to work with Mother Nature and encourage these wonderful predators that we have. And I love this sign. I took this picture. One of my friends has this. I love my family and the environment more than my lawn. And I think that we need to reframe our thinking so that we are not poisoning ourselves, and we're not poisoning the good guys in our neighborhoods. So why native landscapes? And really what it turns out is that if you want to attract birds to your yard, you have to first attract insects. And while most people have been indoctrinated to think that insects are bad, we have to start rethinking that if we want these birds, that we have to have something for them to eat. And almost all birds eat insects at one time or another. Even hummingbirds eat insects. So we need to attract those insects with no poisons. We need to put in the kinds of plants that they want. The monarch butterflies are one of the most charismatic butterflies, and they migrate to Mexico in the winter, and you have to plant milkweed for them because they won't grow and they won't lay their eggs on any other kinds of plants. So this is a good starting point, is to get people to care about the monarch butterflies and talk to people about them. They're an amazing animal, and that gets people hooked. So we need to have better storytelling here about why we want these native plants, because we want the monarchs, but we also want the longleaf skippers and the various bees in our landscapes. And we can do this best with native plants. This is a milkweed. This is a liatris. It's also called a gay feather, and also has other common names. This is a snow square stem, and it's a wonderful native plant that attracts all kinds of insects. I mean, if I have some out in my front yard, and if I need a moment in nature, I can just walk out there once it starts blooming, and I can find all kinds of things. So we have some tools here so that the Native Plant Society, the Florida Native Plant Society, if you go to their website and you go to plants, you can generate a list of a certain kind of plant, like trees or shrubs, that are native to your county. Because Florida is a huge state, because something might be native to Florida doesn't mean it's native to all of Florida. Actually, very few of our natives are native to all of Florida. So people like the purple coneflower because it's a really pretty native, but it's native only to Gadsden County, northwest of Tallahassee. It's not native to Duval County or Clay County, where I am. So you can generate a list of plants that are native to your county, and those are the ones that you want. And we are fortunate in Florida because there's an association of native nurseries, and you can find a native plant, people who have a particular native plant, or we can find local native nurseries. And two of the native nurseries to Jacksonville are going to be at the Native Plant Sale on April 24th, this Saturday, from 10 to 2. They have 2 fan members that will be at this plant sale. It's at Native Park, which is 312 and actually 306 on Park Street in Jacksonville. So there's going to be a big plant sale. And Native Park is managed by the local Native Plant Society, and it is a wonderful example for you to see how natives look in the landscape, because it's been well planted and well maintained over the years. So how do you get started? Well, in our book, you can start step by step, or you can do it all at once. Hire a contractor, including the two fan members that are going to be at that plant sale, and they can come in and transform your whole yard into natives. But or you can do it step by step, little by little. And in our book, the step-by-step guide to a Florida native yard, Marjorie has a typical Florida yard about 1/3 of an acre, and then we broke it down. And how do you landscape it, and where do you start? How do you get started? So these are illustrations from the book, so you can work on sections, look at your drainage, and you want to look at your drainage in both the wet season and the dry seasons. I'm sure you are aware that here in Florida we've got a 5-month wet season that goes from June through April, where we get 70% of our rain comes in those 5 months. Of course, those 5 months are also called the hurricane season, but that's our wet season. And the rest of the year, although this year's been weird, but the rest of the year can be really dry, like only an inch or so a month, if that. Sometimes there's no rain at all in the dry seasons. So it's good for you if you're looking at your property to find out where water gathers. And sometimes you can tell by that are growing. So this is a white top sedge. I love this sedge. It's insect pollinated, unlike most of the sedges. So it's like somebody spray painted it white on the top of the flower. So if you see this is probably in an area that gets wet. And you can range your water flow of your runoff from your roof so that you collect some in rain barrels so that you have it there to use later. And I have 6 rain barrels, and I was really happy for rain the other day because they were almost dry, because I also grow vegetables. All right, and then there's some questionable default landscapes in Florida. I took this photo in the villages, so it's a little farther south, but still this is typical where you have a magnolia. It's a wonderful magnolia. It's a native plant, but the southern magnolia drops its leaves all year round. And so what you have here is a maintenance nightmare for this yard because the leaves are so leathery and stiff that it's really hard to mow over them. And then they have a vertical edge around here, and they've got gravel that could be thrown by the mower. Then they've got shrubs that are actually too close to the tree. Now, so the next door neighbor here has pavers so that the mowers, when they come around to do the mowing, can just go around once without having to come back, because they're gentle curves. They just mow once and then they're done. But here, because there's a vertical edge and they can't get too close to the gravel, after they mow around it, that somebody has to come back with a string trimmer to finish off the job. So as climate-wise landscapers, we want to reduce the use of our power tools to reduce the emissions. So what do we do instead of this? Or if you have a yard with a lawn tree like this magnolia, what do you do? Well, here's our suggestion, is that you would create a grove around the tree with other plants that are also acid-loving plants so that they would be compatible with that magnolia. And you want to make your grove as big as the leaf drop area. So if we go back, you want the grove for this to be as big as the leaf fall area or bigger, because what you want is to have those leaves fall into the grove. So that is your minimum size. And so you could put in other trees if you have a big enough space, or you could just put some shrubs and other plants that are compatible. And again, you want to have pavers or some smooth edge here so that the mowers can come around and just make one sweep and they're done. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky to get in because you don't want to disturb the roots. So you have to do it very carefully. If you run into a root, you're going to need to plant your shrubs somewhere else. But once it gets established and all these other plants are established, then it would become less and less maintenance. And guess what? This is habitat. It's going to provide habitat for the insects and for the birds. So, and it's going to be much more interesting than a lone tree in the yard. And speaking of the magnolias, if you're buying one, don't buy this one. This is a big box store. It's been topped. Plants have hormones, just like we do. And so when you top a tree, it's going to send out side shoots. And those hormones also allow better production of roots. So when you top a tree, it doesn't grow roots as well. So this tree was fairly expensive, more than $100. It was more than 3 inches in diameter at 6 inches above the root flare. It's pot bound. So it's a bad investment. You're going to have to water it and water it and water it for it to adjust to your yard. So it's a bad investment of money and time and water. Much better if you're buying native trees to buy whips, which would be only a year or two old, so that they would, and not topped, so that they would be much smaller. They would take much less work to get them adjusted to your landscape. And they're going to catch up to this big tree in just a couple of years. So you save time and money, and it's better for the tree. The tree has much better chance of survival. And when you do buy a tree that's been grown in a container, the roots are going to be coiling. So this is tough love for a container grown tree. Now, this is not a transplanted tree. This is not a field grown tree, but a container grown tree. You need to rinse the roots. You need to rinse all of that rich medium with fertilizer balls and everything away from the roots. You need to unwind the roots, spread them out, and then you need to irrigate it very thoroughly. And also, you do not trim the tree except for broken branches when you plant it for at least a year, because again, you want those auxins to help redevelop the root system. So rule of thumb here is that this is about a little bit less than an inch in diameter. So this is less than an inch in caliper, is that after you plant it every day for at least a couple of weeks, you're going to need 3 gallons of water. So that's a whole watering can full. Linda Chalker Scott on informedgardener.com has all kinds of horticulture myths. So she has the whole science on why rinsing roots is the best way. And here in Florida, you want the roots to grow out, and that will make your tree more drought tolerant, because the roots are going to be out there, and also more wind tolerant. And here is what happens sometimes when you don't uncoil the roots. Now, this is not in Florida. I think this is in Northern California. So these are copper beeches. They were beautiful trees, probably planted 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, but they never took them out of the basket. So you can still see the orange plastic string here. And that's because they were planted in too small a space. So this is probably only 5 feet between the sidewalk and the street. So they, the supervisor of planting said, well, don't take it out of their package because we don't want the roots to disturb the sidewalk and the street. So just keep it in there. But this is what happens. It chokes itself. And you wouldn't know until 20 years later that you would really kill the tree by not uncircling the roots. So this is why you want to do that. Also, when you take all that rich growing medium away, that means that the tree will get used to your lousy soil, whatever it is. Don't use any amendments in the planting hole. No fertilizer, no compost, no nothing. So you just have your own lousy, sandy soil, whatever it is, water it well, but then later on, you could, if you think it needs a boost, lay some compost on top of the soil outside of the root ball. This is actually a sable minor, which is, and I did this years ago, it's now 20 feet tall. But what you want is a ring of compost on top. You can put mulch on top of the compost, but don't dig it in. And if you want to not do it again, the next time you do it, it would be farther out, because what you want to do is entice those roots out into the soil outside of the planting hole, not to stay inside the planting hole. Shrubs have so many uses, but the default landscape is just shrubs as a foundation plant, and even dwarf shrubs grow too big, and putting woody plants right next to your house is probably not the best thing to do. So there's all kinds of ways that you can use shrubs, and we have some wonderful native shrubs. This is the Pinkster azalea. It's just wonderful. And you can also use your shrubs not as a hedge, but as a hedgerow, where you plant different kinds of shrubs and maybe even small trees in a way so that you don't have to trim them very much. So this is one of my neighbors, and what she ended up doing was just losing part of her lawn along the way. She does have some Asian azaleas here, but she also has beautyberry, and this is the oak leaf hydrangea, which is a native that does quite well. So you would pick out plants that have different seasonal interests. So that's much more interesting than just one thing as a privacy hedge. This is at UNF, and I like this because back here that's not maintained at all, but what they did is they created a nice, even, easy to mow thing, and you've got native shrubs and a redbud tree here. These are native hollies and redbud trees here, so that this looks like a civilized edge to a very uncivilized part of the landscape. Freedom lawns, this is my front lawn. This part was taken out because the lawn was not doing well. When we moved in 2004, the lawn guys came and said, "Oh, we're going to continue. This is what you have to pay." I said, "No, thank you." And they said, "Oh, it's going to die if we don't do it." Well, it didn't die, but it ended up being much more diverse. We have all kinds of things, probably more than 100 different kinds of plants that grow in our lawn that gets mowed, not very often, and we just mowed for the first time all winter just last week. So it has the St. John's worts, rain lilies, asters, toadflax, you know, other kinds of plants, some native, some not. But it's a freedom lawn because it's free from poisons. And if you're removing lawn, you have the option of just stop mowing. And this is what we did in the back area. This tree was taken out in one of the 2004 hurricanes. So we just let it stop growing, see what happened. And over here is the top of our septic tank mound. And so we have these meadows. But then other things planted themselves. The goldenrod planted itself. Some of the grasses I planted, some of them planted themselves. I planted two kinds of magnolias. This is the southern magnolia, and this is the sweet bay magnolia that I planted next to each other at the edge of that area. And then just last year, it ends up looking like this. The magnolias are much bigger. I've got Tallahassee grass and some other things. So this continues. And the way it started was to just stop mowing. But if you have areas that you can take out lawn, then do it. This is our front meadow, and this all used to be lawn. That Pinkster azalea on the front of my book cover was right about here. So again, we have lawn that goes into here, but it's just a nice even mowing edge. And now, a few years later, there's probably 12 feet less lawn here. So we've been taking out the lawn little by little. So in the contest for water, trees will always win. So you want to take your lawn away from the trees. So the ferns keep growing out. So you end up with an edge like this. So this is in our yard. So we have royal fern, cinnamon fern, and netleaf chain fern that all grew there on their own. And when my husband mows the lawn, he just goes under the fronds. And every few years when I take out more lawn, and the ferns keep creeping in, and he has less lawn to mow. But when you do that, you have to change the sprinkler system. So this was a sprinkler head that was a flush thing, a flush head so that you could mow over it. But when we took out the lawn, then we put it up on a raised thing. If you have areas like this that you want vegetative, you need to dig out the trees, not just take them, not just trim them, because the trees will keep trying to grow. So if you want less maintenance, you would end up digging them out to save you work. So you need to adjust. This landscape is at Jack's NAS on the naval base, and they had a ratty lawn here, and they took it out and they replaced it with mulch. And that is the end result, is they wanted mulch, and it's been mulch with nothing growing on it for years now, and they didn't ever take out the sprinkler system. So you need to adjust that. And mulch is never supposed to be the end result of a non-lawn landscape. Just a quick story here on a beautyberry that seeded itself into that edge, and it was surrounded by water oaks. So I decided I would rather have the beautyberry, because in our yards, the gardener's hand always is evident. So I took out the water oaks cleared it out. So that's how it looked. And then the next year it grew like that. And now a couple of years later, I have to take out more lawn here because it's bigger. So what I've done with Marjorie is we have a slideshow that's available for anybody to download. It's on the Native Plant Society website under resources and downloadable documents. And you can download this PowerPoint. It downloads as a PDF file, but then there's a link to the PowerPoint. It comes with a script. It's about 10 minutes long. So this is for you to give to anybody who needs some convincing that native plants are a good idea. This is the village's all native yard. So there's no lawn here at all. So everything in this yard is native. And this Saturday at Native Park, I hope to see you there. And if it's not raining, I will have my books to sell there too. So I hope to see you at Native Park on Saturday. And then you can see native plants. We can show you around Native Park, you can buy some native plants and get started on your own nativizing. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate you being here and giving that presentation. One thing I've been fortunate enough to hear and attend one of your workshops that was more like a whole day. So thank you very much for condensing a lot of what you do into a very short program for us. But one thing that stood out to me in your program when it comes to climate change and what's going on is that a lot of things that we do at home, just some of these, choices about, plants and what to buy, as well as how to install them in our lawn. And then again, just that balance between the lawn and the plants and how we can give back with having some of those plant choices. It really stood out. So this time of year, just wanting everyone to think about that. Think about your landscape and gardening right now and how these plant decisions are really important. The native plant sale is also such the perfect time to be able to make some of these plant choices, because what you'll see when you go to the native plant sale on Saturday is that you show up and not only do you have some excellent plant vendors that are there selling the right plant that you can find the right place for, but then you have all of our local Native Plant Society ICSIA members that can help you to figure out what plants you want to install and how to get them and really be able to have some back and forth with plant experts and landscapers. And for those of us that maybe throughout the year go to the big box stores and try and get a few plants for our landscape, you never get that back and forth with them, and also would never get maybe that insight that Jenny shared with us about the plant life cycle and what really works here. Even if it says it's Florida friendly, what that means for the most part is that it's not that it will grow here, but in fact could be an invasive species and many other things. I want to open it up for people to ask questions to Jenny, and go ahead. You can unmute yourself or raise your hands. I see I have a question from John, but John, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go for it and ask yourself.
Sure, Ginny. My question just is about restrictions. The villages have homeowners association restrictions, so I'm curious as to how they were allowed to do that, and whether other neighborhood restrictions, in Springfield and Avondale Riverside might inhibit native lawns.
Dealing with HOAs is a bit tricky, and when you have a native yard, they need to be assured that it is a cared for yard and that you did this on purpose. So it takes some outreach on your part. I have a sign at the front of my yard. It's a habitat sign from the World Wildlife Federation saying that this is a backyard habitat, and that because that out front there isn't lawn where there was before. Now, I'm not in a homeowners association that has rules like that, but still I want my neighbors to know that I did this on purpose. And you do this by mowing paths through meadows, making it look like you did it on purpose, and doing things to the edges to civilize it. And I did an article on the villages because I did a couple of years ago, went down to their tour of their native landscapes there in the villages. And so I have some more details and some more things like that on my website on greengardeningmatters.com. So you can look for that. But, you know, and the thing is too, that what we do in our yard doesn't seem like it would be significant, but there's millions of homeowners. And so if you take us all together, we're huge. And so and for our waterways and everything, what we do in our yard really is important.
Margaret, go ahead.
Curious to know if you can give any advice for how to deal with dollarweed.
Dollarweed is a native.
Yeah.
It likes wet habitat. So if you are irrigating your lawn, stop. The dollarweed doesn't like it if it's dry. The other thing about dollarweed is that it really is a good ground cover, and it's also edible. So you can eat that, and, you know, chop it up in salads. You can make dip and pesto out of it, as long as you're not poisoning your lawn, that is. But yeah, it's very aggressive. It's a wonderful plant, but you know, I do harvest it when it grows in my vegetable beds, but if it's in my lawn, it doesn't make any difference. It takes to mowing, it's fine, but it does like wet.
I put 2 websites into the chat window if folks want to check out some resources for maybe if you don't yourself want to plant a whole bunch of native plants in your lawn, and if you want to reach out to some local consultants and experts. Joshua Rosenberg, who is on who's a member of Resilient Jacks. His company is Native Jacks, and I put his website up there. Hey, Josh. And Waka Palaka. To be honest, I've been following them on Instagram for a while because they do great landscape changes, but I had no idea that they're on College Street, like right past King. And so I recently did a big native plant order through them, and he went and, you know, and sourced all the native plants from me from some of those native plant nurseries, which was super helpful. And then I could just go pick them up and do my order that way. So anyway, both are, you know, extremely local. And again, check out their websites if you want assistance with either your native plants or also just the installation and a lot of that, you know, landscaping work that Ginny mentioned. You can have some on-site expertise to help you with some of those things. But with that, Ginny, thank you so much for joining us. With the remaining 10 minutes, I'm just going to run through a few quick things on the resiliency front to close out our meeting today. And let me just.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Ginny.
I wish everybody a happy Earth Day, and I hope you do something for our mother on Thursday.
Totally agreed. Thank you for that. And here is one thing that you can do. So Ashante's done an excellent job of helping to promote this event, but Resilient Jacks put together a program as a part of the Florida Climate Week series. Florida Climate Week starts, what is today? The 19th today. And there is expert lineup of presentations and speakers every day. It's statewide, right? It's Florida Climate Week. The only programs from North Florida are this program right here, ours, which is going to be aired on Thursday at 11 a.m. or the 22nd. Hopefully that's Thursday and I have my days right. And then just before us, actually WJCT, Brennan Rivers and Melissa Ross are going to be doing a program with Climate Central and some talking about climate communications in the state of Florida. And there's a lot of great insight and intel on how to talk about climate. And they're going to do a presentation on that. But I would suggest for sure to check out Florida Climate Week, the website, to find the different programs you may be interested in. But this one I'll plug, Our Vulnerable Places. I put together on behalf of Resilient Jacks a lineup of speakers that really walks through specifically in Northeast Florida, what lands are vulnerable, and Sean LaHave covered that. And then what are the solutions to that? Guillermo was able to talk about that from an engineering perspective. And then we jump to how are parks actually a solution and a resilient solution to that. Nancy Powell from Scenic Jacksonville and Riverfront Parks Now, who's on the program today, speaks to that. Then John Sapora from LISC, as well as Jerome Crawford from Metro North CDC, talked about how these issues, these sort of vulnerable places, right, are actually impacting people, right? How long-term is flooding and drainage concerns impacting real people in North Florida? And so they actually share a video about people that have been impacted by climate change and are still now 3 and 4 years later just getting out of being able to rebuild and regrow. And then I conclude the program with the discussion about some of the policy solutions that Northeast Florida has been sort of, you know, sticking their toes into the sand, if you will, for quite a few years, right? This is really all post-Irma, this whole resiliency concept for Jacksonville. And so where are we now and where are we going? And so I try to cover that. So I would encourage folks to listen to that. And if you can't tune in, I'm going to put it on our YouTube channel and you'll be able to see it afterwards. But I'm really proud of that, being able to bring some of those voices all together. And to John and Nancy, who are on the program right now, thank you for your participation in that. The other thing that I wanted to reach out to folks and ask you about is Resilient Jacks. You may or may not know, but our structure and bylaws have recently been formalized. We have a steering committee that essentially determines, you know, I guess the initiatives, right, or programs that Resilient Jacks is getting themselves into. And so the steering committee, Ashante showed you our website earlier today with those founding members, right, that are all a part of our steering committee. And I want to thank those on the line that are a member of our steering committee. But we're actually now forming standing committees, and we're starting off with policy, outreach, and communications. And so if anyone on the call today, or if you know of anyone that you think to yourself, I know a perfect person who, you know, maybe wants to be more involved with the behind the scenes work of Resilient Jacks and really what Resilient Jacks could be doing in the city of Jacksonville when it comes to what are our policy, you know, goals and objectives, what are our outreach you know, programs and events that we want to do this year, and then how are we communicating with the community about some of these things. I would encourage you to nominate yourself or nominate someone else. You can put it in the chat window to me now. You can raise your hand or you can shoot me an email. But what I'm going to do is try to create small groups, about 4 to 5 people for each of these committees, to really start to look at Resilient Jacks, how we're developing our policies, our events, and our communications for the remainder of the year. And you guys would report directly to that steering committee and try to get some things done for 2021. So the policy team, and I'm sorry, I got to scooch some windows around to read it. The policy team will develop our policy priorities and recommendations. This group will probably be working with our new CRO. They will be working to implement the outcome of that special committee on resiliency report. So all of that is going to go through, filter through the policy committee to try and make some real change. Our outreach committee is primarily going to be doing what are our events? What are these meetings, right? These monthly meetings I've been putting together. You know, how do we want to put together some strong programs, either monthly or, I mean, post-COVID, it could be a community outreach event, but really thinking about our events, our meetings, and educational opportunities to work with the community. And that's what the outreach team is going to do. And then last, our communications team. Hopefully it'll be people that listen to that program from Brendan Rivers and Melissa Ross, right? And really think about how to communicate about climate change, but take the work that that outreach committee is going to do in coming up with those policy recommendations, take the work that the outreach committee is going to do about the outreach goals and events that we want to do, and then develop the communications plan, as well as make sure that our marketing plan is always up to date around making that happen. So these are the three standing committees that will help us to take on this work and sort of delve a little deeper. And I would think too, if you are interested in becoming a steering committee member, this would probably be good, a pretty good pool of talented people helping to create resilient JACs that would eventually move up to become a member of the steering committee, which helps with our direction in its entirety. So again, put it in the chat window or email me or reach out to me if you want to join one of them, and I'll follow up with you with more information about what might be needed. But with that, I have, some really, it's everything from Tallahassee is bittersweet. Okay, that's just how it is with our legislative session. So Resilient Florida is a great piece of legislation that I think is going to really improve the amount of financial resources and funding for resiliency work. And here are the three things that I think are most relevant to us. This legislation will enact or implement a grant program that will help to fund community resilience. It will authorize local governments to create regional resilience coalitions. I think that Jacksonville has one in Resilient JACs. And so again, this could be a great resource, a funding resource for Resilient JACs in moving forward. And I have a typo in this one, but establish the Florida Flood Fund for Applied Research at USF. And the reason that I think that's relevant for us is because the applied research I think that's going to come out of this could be extremely helpful for us. So Governor DeSantis, in his sort of January 2021, what he wanted to see from legislative session, he said he wanted $1 billion to be set aside basically for sea level rise planning in the state of Florida. And luckily the Senate and the House both have advanced companion legislation that puts a little bit more structure around what that would look like. Again, it looks like it's going to mean a lot of money for resilience planning, for outreach and engagement work. And that's all what Resilient JACs is all about. And so I think that this is going to really help us as it continues to move through the process. That being said, that's why it's really important that we get those working groups together to try to figure out, what do we want to do? What might it cost, and how might we go about trying to get some of those funds in order to be able to really put some money towards some of the work that we would like to do. The reason that I say this is bittersweet is because rather than that $1 billion coming from the economic stimulus package that was coming down from the federal government through some of the COVID relief programs from President Biden. Instead, they directed the money out of the Affordable Housing Fund, which is comes through the state of Florida through the documentary stamp tax. So instead of money set aside for affordable housing, it has now been thwarted to resiliency. And that is for anyone who follows affordable housing, that is not a fund that has a lot of excess revenue to give away. So that is where it's at right now. And with that, I did have just a few other updates from the city of Jacksonville. Number one, the CRO job position closed on April 5th, and I have it from good authority to some people that are within the city of Jacksonville that they will likely hire a CRO by June. And so, I mean, obviously that's a fairly big window, but for those of us that are thinking, okay, you know, it's been a long time. We've been talking about the CRO for a while. We set aside the funding a long time ago. When is it going to happen? Most people that I've spoken to believe that June is a relatively safe time frame to expect that we might have a chief resiliency officer in the city of Jacksonville. The other update that's happened since we last met, thank you, Ashante, for that round of applause. I'll take credit. No, I'm just kidding. The other exciting thing that happened, some of you were on these calls, but the Adaptation Action Area Working Group, which met in 2019 and had a whole series of, you know, important outcomes from that. What are we going to do with 2 feet of sea level rise by 2060, right? So that outcome had a series of public engagement meetings that followed. And I know that I had sent the information for many of you and encouraged you to attend and be a part of those public engagement workshops. So just about 2 weeks ago, Councilman Michael Boylan set up a outcome of those public engagement workshops. And it was fairly informative. It was pretty quick, but it was a few slides that the city had put together, or the consultants for the city put together, to basically say, what does the public feel about the outcome of the planning for sea level rise? And I know that's a little nuanced, but it was good feedback. And I don't have a direct link to that presentation, but if anyone wants to reach out to me to try to get it, or if you want to reach out to Councilman Boylan to ask for that presentation, there should be a video recording of it, then you're welcome to do that. But I think it's good insight to, you know, what do maybe more lay people think about some of the solutions that are proposed for adapting to sea level rise. There was some feedback about, you know, people don't want to retreat, but they might be more willing to, you know, have their homes elevated. They're afraid of flood insurance rate increases. They want to see more green infrastructure. So there was a lot of high level stuff that was maybe what we might think, but they just had some, you know, kind of overall themes to it that would be a good basis for, you know, anyone thinking about resiliency in Jacksonville and what the sentiment is of some of these topics. And that is everything from me. But with that, I'm going to open it up to any updates that people want to give. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you just want to say hi, or if you want to say something that you're doing or working on. You know what, Nancy, if you wouldn't mind telling people about the ADAPT panel coming up tomorrow and reminding everyone to tune in.
Well, I'm prepping for it today, and I'm hopefully I haven't done something like this, but it's at 7 o'clock tomorrow. We've been posting it on social media, and it was in our newsletter, the Riverfront Parks Now newsletter. You do have to register for it, but it's from 7 to 8:30, and I'm on a panel. Brendan Rivers is going to be the host with Gloria McNair from Groundwork Jacks and Rebecca Beaver from the National Park Service. So the subject is how parks and green spaces can help fight, help in the fight against climate change. So it should be fun, and sign up. Do you have the maybe?
Yeah, Ashante put the link in the chat. So folks, okay, feel free to sign up for that and tune in. And thanks, Nancy and Gloria, who's on the call too, for being voices on that program. Carol, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Carol Bailey White, president of Duval Audubon Society. And somebody mentioned Earth Day, of course, this week. If you can't do anything for Earth Day on Earth Day, please feel free to come out and join our cleanup that we are hosting along Heritage River Road, which leads to the Joe Carlucci boat ramp off of Hector Drive, and I'm going to put the details in the chat. We would love to see you. So here you go. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Carol. Perfect. Does anyone else have anything they want to share with the group while we're all here?
Hey, Shannon. and
Hey, Josh,
everybody
go
else.
ahead.
So I just wanted to, I put the flyer in the chat, and we're having an Earth Day event at the Biodiversity Corridor S-Line on the Emerald Trail, which is just behind Shands Hospital. We are gonna be having the green team out there, and there's gonna be music and food and demonstrations and a whole bunch of cool stuff. And we're also going to unveil the design that the little on Moncrief and 13th. It's like a triangle vacant lot right now, and we've got a grant to start regenerating that space. So we're gonna unveil that, talk about that a little bit, and we'd love to see you all out there and supporting us.
Well, thank you, Josh. Thank you for bringing biodiversity to a bike trail, because they always need a little bit of help. And I think it's going to look really great. And thanks to Shante for putting the event in the chat window there, so people can click on that if you want to learn more about the program. Lots of Earth Day stuff. So that's no surprise. We all need to do a better job of spreading out our wonderful events throughout the year, but that's okay. April's the right time to do a lot of these things. So it's a good reason for us to get some more people out than maybe might normally show up. Anyone else have anything before we sign off? Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all for joining today. Thanks for all of the messages in the chat window. I'll send out notes, and feel free to just check in with our Facebook page and on our newsletter. If you're not a member already, please become a member so that you get our newsletter and know about upcoming events. And huge thank you to Ginny for your wonderful presentation today. And I will see you all at our next meeting. Have a great day.
Thank you.